Melania's real past with Trump is coming back to haunt the family. Okay, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay with me here because this story is genuinely important, and it starts with what might be the most catastrophic self-own we've seen from the Trump family in a very long time. Melania Trump is trying to cash in on her husband's desperate cover-up of his dark past. And in doing so, she just drew everyone's attention back to the one story she and Donald never wanted anyone to examine too closely: the real story of how they met, the real story of her background, and the real story of how a relatively unknown Slovenian model somehow ended up with one of the most exclusive visas in American immigration history, a visa typically reserved for Nobel laureates and Olympic champions. Let me say that again so it lands properly. The First Lady of the United States received the same immigration classification as Nobel Prize winners and world-renowned scientists. And nobody in the mainstream press seems willing to dig into what that actually reveals about both of them. Here's what you need to understand. Just 6 days from now, on January 30th, Amazon is releasing a $40 million documentary about Melania Trump. $40 million. That's what Amazon paid for the rights to this film directed by Brett Ratner, who himself hasn't directed a major Hollywood production since he was accused of sexual misconduct by 6 women back in 2017. And the timing of all this is absolutely not coincidental, because right now, as Melania prepares to monetize her life story, the Justice Department has released nearly 30,000 pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, documents that contain hundreds of references to President Donald Trump. Documents showing he flew on Epstein's private jet at least 8 times between 1993 and 1996. Documents that include a reference to a 14-year-old girl being taken to Mar-a-Lago in 1994, where Epstein allegedly introduced her to Trump. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications because this story is developing by the hour and the pieces are finally starting to connect. Now, let me take you back to where this all started, because this wasn't just any period in Donald Trump's life. This was 1998. This was the height of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. This was when Ghislaine Maxwell was described in the London Sunday Mirror as someone whose job was bringing young, beautiful women to wealthy Manhattan businessmen like Trump. And the place where Donald Trump met his future wife? A club called the Kit Kat Club. Now, if you've been following this story for any length of time, you know exactly what the Kit Kat Club was. This was not some elegant Manhattan gala. This was a specific kind of establishment where wealthy, older men met young Eastern European women. A man named Paolo Zampolli ran a modeling agency called ID Models that specifically recruited young Eastern European women, brought them to New York, and then paraded them at Kit Kat Club parties where men like Donald Trump would show up. That's the romantic origin story. That's the fairy tale Melania is now trying to sell for $40 million to Amazon. But here's where it gets interesting. When you actually read Melania's own words, even in her sanitized, ghost-written autobiography, the cracks in the story are impossible to ignore. She describes showing up to this club, tired and jet-lagged. She describes being in the VIP section when a man approached her table. That man was Donald Trump. And he was already there with another woman, a beautiful blonde, in Melania's own words. Her name was Selena Middelfart. And Trump was there with her when he spotted Melania, and by the end of the night, he'd gotten her number and started what would become their relationship. Picture this scene. Donald Trump is at a club known for introducing wealthy men to young Eastern European models. He's there with one young woman already. He sees Melania, and the rest, as they say, is history. This is the love story she's trying to sell. This is what she's merchandising. Stay with me here because what I'm about to walk you through is a pattern that, once you see it, you cannot unsee. Let's start with the college degree. You probably forgot about this story because it got buried so quickly back in 2016. Melania's official website claimed she had received a degree in design and architecture from a university in Slovenia. The Republican National Convention program repeated this claim. It was part of her official biography for years. There was just one problem. CBS News actually checked the official public records of the University of Ljubljana. Melania Trump is not listed as having graduated there with any degree. Not listed. The degree simply doesn't exist. When this was exposed, her website was quietly taken down. She posted a tweet claiming the website does not accurately reflect my current business and professional interests. But that's not what happened. What happened is that a fundamental claim about her educational background was proven false. Fabricated. And instead of addressing it, they just made the evidence disappear and hoped everyone would forget. Her official biography was later changed to say she paused her studies to advance her modeling career. That's the sanitized version. The reality, as reported by GQ magazine, is that she dropped out after her freshman year. But here's the thing, that's not even the most significant part, because the questions about Melania's immigration status are far more consequential, and they've never been adequately answered. If you're finding this valuable, hit that like button right now because this story is about to get significantly more complicated. Here's what the Associated Press uncovered through actual documents, not speculation, not rumor, but documents. Melania was paid for at least 10 modeling assignments between September and October of 1996, during a time when her visa only allowed her to be in the United States and look for work, not perform paid work. Look for work. Those modeling assignments, according to the documents the AP examined, would have been outside the bounds of her visa, which means she was working illegally. Now, some would argue that lots of models did this back then, that it was common practice. And that's true. It was common. It was also illegal. And it becomes significantly more relevant when you consider what came next. In 2001, Melania received a green card, but not just any green card. She received what's called an EB-1 visa, commonly known as the Einstein visa. Think about what that means. This is one of the most exclusive immigration categories in the entire American system. It's reserved for individuals who demonstrate extraordinary ability in their field. We're talking Nobel Prize winners, Olympic medalists, groundbreaking scientists, world-renowned artists at the absolute peak of their profession. Melania Trump was a moderately successful model who had appeared in some catalog work and a few magazine spreads. She was not Naomi Campbell. She was not Cindy Crawford. She was not Tyra Banks. By no objective measure did she meet the extraordinary ability standard that this visa requires. And yet somehow, she got one. Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett put it perfectly during a June 2025 congressional hearing when she said, "It doesn't take an Einstein to see that the math ain't mathing here." Think about that for a moment. How does a model with no extraordinary documented achievements receive a visa category designed for Nobel laureates? And more importantly, why has this question never been answered? Here's what makes this even more suspicious. During the 2016 campaign, when questions about Melania's immigration status were being raised, Donald Trump stood at a rally and announced that Melania would hold a press conference within the next couple of weeks to address everything. He was so confident. He said she had everything documented. He said it would be fun to watch. He told his supporters to let the story simmer for a while, and then they'd have a little news conference and settle it once and for all. That press conference never happened. Not in 2 weeks, not in 2 months, not ever. They simply stopped talking about it and hoped the media would move on, and the media did move on. Because that's what happens when you just refuse to answer questions long enough. But here's what most people miss about this entire situation: the timeline, the connections, the pattern of behavior that extends far beyond just Melania. This was 1998 when they met. This was the period when Donald Trump was photographed repeatedly with Jeffrey Epstein, when he was quoted in New York Magazine saying Epstein was a terrific guy who he'd known for 15 years, when he said Epstein liked beautiful women as much as he did, and many of them were on the younger side. This was when Ghislaine Maxwell was operating in the same Manhattan social circle. And the place where Trump met his wife was a club specifically designed to connect wealthy older men with young Eastern European women brought over by modeling agencies. You have to understand the ecosystem here. This wasn't random. This was a network, a system, and everyone who was part of that Manhattan elite social scene in the late 1990s knew exactly how it worked. The modeling agencies, the clubs, the parties, the wealthy men, the young women who often came from countries where the economic opportunities were limited and the promise of an American modeling career was irresistible. And in the middle of all of this, somehow Melania manages to transition from working illegally on a tourist visa to receiving one of the most prestigious immigration classifications available. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this is reaching. The question we have to ask is simple. If Melania legitimately received an Einstein visa through her extraordinary abilities as a model, why wouldn't Donald Trump have bragged about it constantly? This is a man who brags about everything. He brags about ratings, he brags about crowd sizes, he brags about deals, he brags about things that aren't even true. But he never once in all those years mentioned that his wife was such an extraordinary talent that she qualified for the same visa category as Nobel Prize winners. He never mentioned it because it doesn't add up. The story doesn't make sense. And they know if they talk about it too much, someone might actually look into the details. Now let me connect some dots here. What's really notable is how this fits into a broader pattern of the Trump family's relationship with immigration that reveals a staggering level of hypocrisy. Here you have an administration that separated families at the border, that called immigrants rapists and criminals, that implemented travel bans, that is currently conducting mass deportation operations. And at the center of it all is a first lady whose own immigration path appears to include working illegally, potentially falsifying credentials, and receiving a visa classification that experts say she almost certainly didn't qualify for. But here's where it gets genuinely concerning. Melania isn't hiding from this history. She's actively monetizing it. She sold her memoir to a publisher. She sold a documentary about her life to Amazon for $40 million. She sold meme coins that crashed 98%. She sold overpriced jewelry and bracelets. When Trump's PACs were raising money, her stylists and hairdressers were being paid tens of thousands of dollars a month from donor funds. When she gives speeches at Trump-related events, she demands six-figure speaking fees. When networks want to interview her, she reportedly demands payment. This is not a woman who was accidentally thrust into the spotlight. This is someone who has methodically built a grifting operation around her proximity to power, and the audacity of it would almost be impressive if it weren't so transparent. Even her performance on the national stage has been marked by deception. Remember the 2016 Republican National Convention speech? The one where she stood up and delivered those inspiring words about working hard for what you want in life and treating people with dignity and respect. Those weren't her words. They were Michelle Obama's words, lifted almost verbatim from the 2008 Democratic National Convention. Entire passages were plagiarized. When it was exposed, the Trump campaign initially denied it, then eventually blamed a speechwriter, then moved on and hoped everyone would forget. That's the pattern. Lie, get caught, deflect, move on, hope no one remembers. And it's worked remarkably well for remarkably long. So when you put all of this together, what emerges is a picture that is very different from the image they have tried to project. You have a woman who lied about her educational credentials, who worked illegally in the United States, who received an immigration status she almost certainly didn't legitimately qualify for, who met her husband at a club designed to connect wealthy men with young Eastern European women during the exact period when he was closest with Jeffrey Epstein, who plagiarized her biggest public address, and who has spent the years since systematically extracting money from every possible angle of her association with the Trump name. And now she's releasing a $40 million documentary 6 days from now, trying to capitalize on the moment when her husband is desperately trying to control the narrative around the Epstein files. The timing is not coincidental. She's trying to get ahead of the story. She's trying to frame it on her terms. She's trying to make money off the attention before anyone looks too closely at what that attention might reveal. Here's where it gets genuinely terrifying. The implications of this extend beyond just the personal hypocrisy. The Justice Department has now confirmed that less than 1% of the Epstein files have been released, despite Congress passing legislation requiring full disclosure by December 19th. 2 million documents remain under review, and in the documents that have been released, we've seen emails showing Trump flew on Epstein's jet many more times than previously reported. We've seen a photo of Trump with Ghislaine Maxwell found on Steve Bannon's phone. We've seen references to a 14-year-old girl being taken to Mar-a-Lago. The more Melania tries to monetize her story, the more she draws attention to it. The more she draws attention to it, the more people start asking questions. And the more people start asking questions, the harder it becomes to maintain the fairy tale version of events. She's essentially betting that the grift is worth the risk, that she can make her $40 million and sell her merchandise before the full picture comes into focus. Maybe she's right. She's gotten away with it for almost 30 years now. But there's a reason why Donald Trump promised that press conference in 2016 and then never delivered it. There's a reason why they quietly took down the website with the fake degree claims instead of defending them. There's a reason why the Einstein visa story keeps changing depending on who's telling it. They know the real story doesn't hold up to scrutiny. They've always known. And their entire strategy has been to run out the clock, change the subject, and hope that the next scandal distracts everyone from the last one. What's different now is that the Epstein connection has brought renewed attention to that entire era. People are looking at the late 1990s Manhattan social scene with fresh eyes. They're connecting dots that weren't connected before. They're asking questions that weren't asked before. And right in the middle of all of it is this story of how a young Slovenian model met a wealthy older man at a club designed specifically for those kinds of introductions during the exact period when that wealthy older man was closest to Jeffrey Epstein. Let me leave you with 3 things to remember. First, Melania's immigration history has never been adequately explained. The Einstein visa that defies logical explanation, the illegal work, the degree that never existed, these questions remain unanswered because they don't want them answered. Second, the timing of this documentary is not accidental. Releasing a $40 million film about Melania's life story while the Epstein files are being released is an attempt to control the narrative, to frame the story on their terms before anyone else can frame it on theirs. Third, the pattern is unmistakable: lie, get caught, deflect, move on. It's worked for decades. The question is whether it can work forever. Here's what to watch for in the coming weeks. The documentary releases January 30th. There will be a three-part docuseries following it, and the Justice Department says there are over 2 million more Epstein documents to release. The intersection of these two timelines, the Melania monetization campaign and the Epstein file releases, is going to create a collision that neither she nor Donald can fully control. The truth has a way of surfacing, especially when people keep drawing attention to exactly the parts of the story they should be trying to keep buried. Democracy doesn't defend itself, it depends on people paying attention, on asking questions, on refusing to accept stories that don't add up. I'll be watching, and so should you. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on because this story is far from finished. The next few weeks are going to reveal a lot more about what the Trump family has been hiding for almost 30 years. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.